And welcome back to the Touchline Talk Show. As I said, we're going to go through Bundesliga, La Liga previews this week. Then we'll save the other three major leagues, Premier League, Serie A, Ligue 1, for next week's show as we get ready for all of these leagues to start their new seasons. So, what we're going to do here for all of these leagues, we're going to first recap some of the biggest developments of the summer, players leaving, players coming into the league, sort of the marquee signings you need to know about, and then talk about the three biggest storylines I'm looking at, the things I'm most interested in heading into the season. So for the Bundesliga, obviously the summer has been dominated by the two teams that dominate this league in Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich, plenty of moving in and out here. Matthias de Ligt, the most recent signing, of course, already got Sadio Mane, Ryan Gravenberch, Dusan Rizwari in to help fortify this team. And then on the departing side, Robert Lewandowski, Nicolas Sua, Corentin Tolisso are the bigger names that left. Tolisso not playing that big of a role recently. Sula kind of in and out. Lewandowski is obviously the one key player, but the other two guys have been there, have been stable of that club, so I wanted to mention them as well. And you look at this, and this is very much kind of like for like replacements slash filling needs. And I talked about this before, but you need an upgrade at right back. If there's one weakness in the team, that's where it is. Dusan Rizwari, check. You add Gravenberch to Jamal Musiala, you've got two of the most promising young midfielders in the world. You can always use an upgrade at center back, so you get Matthias de Ligt, who fits at Bayern much better than he did at Juventus. And Sadio Mane proved last season at the second half once Luis Diaz came in, he's more than capable of playing as a number 9. You can play him out wide, you can play him in the center. So my point when they signed him was this is both cover for Robert Lewandowski potentially leaving, or it's just an upgrade at the wing position. Lewandowski, of course, is gone. You would think Mane is going to play through the middle. So the question becomes, what is the gap between these two players? Can Mane carry the load the way Lewandowski has? But from a roster standpoint and a starting lineup standpoint, they have filled the departures, filled the area of need, and upgraded at multiple other positions with guys like de Ligt and Rizwari. So, very good summer for Bayern. And the same can be said for Borussia Dortmund, who might have my favorite summer of any team in the world. Also mentioned this a little bit because they got their business done early for the most part. Sebastian Haller coming in to replace Erling Haaland, who of course went to Manchester City. It sounds just horrible news. Haller found out a few weeks ago, maybe not even two, maybe it was more like a week ago, but recently diagnosed with a tumor, still going through testing, developing a treatment plan, but it does sound possible he's back in a matter of months, which is incredibly promising news. Wish him all the best, of course. So that will be a little bit delayed, but there are other players who can handle that striker position in the interim. And then the other players are really where I want to focus. Karim Adeyemi, and then your two center backs. Sula, who just left Bayern Munich, and Nico Schlotterbeck, who was as good as any center back in the Bundesliga last season. Your other notable departures outside of Erling Haaland, Roman Bürki, longtime goalkeeper, Axel Witsel, Marcel Schmelzer. Not guys playing huge roles at this point, but again, sort of those club legends, guys who have been at Dortmund for a very, very long time. I will save some of my Dortmund thoughts for one of our storylines here, but these two teams, incredibly busy. Players in, players out, big names, both of them, both arrivals and departures. It's going to be a little bit different looking Bundesliga next season, which is exciting from a neutral perspective just to see how all of these changes end up playing out, both from a Germany perspective and from a Champions League sort of European hierarchy perspective. A couple other notable moves in the league I wanted to mention. Bayern Leverkusen has signed 20-year-old Adam Hlozek from Sparta Prague in the Czech Republic. He had two really, really good seasons for Sparta Prague and very promising player for a team that had a very good season. So that's a name to keep your eye on if you're looking for sort of a newcomer, instant impact kind of guy. Leipzig's big signing, Xaver Schlager, comes from Wolfsburg, but he also played at Red Bull Salzburg, so he's familiar with the Red Bull system, how that all works. And for Leipzig, your two notable departures, Tyler Adams, of course, at Leeds, and Nordi Mukiele. This team is undergoing some roster turnover the past season and a half or so. So those are your recent moves there. The other one I wanted to mention, just a departure, but Union Berlin, who had a phenomenal season last year, have sold Taiwo Awonini to Nottingham Forest as one of Forest's marquee signings as they enter the Premier League. He had 15 league goals last season in the Bundesliga. So that is something Union Berlin is going to have to replace. There are new pieces coming in. We'll see if they can make up for that departure, but that is the other notable departure in the Bundesliga. Okay, on to our storylines. My first one is simply, are we going to have a title race? This is one of my storylines almost every season in the Bundesliga. A, because it's always a question that deserves discussion, and B, this year in particular could be fascinating. All in all, Bayern had a phenomenal summer. Really big fan of what they've done. We just don't know how much losing Robert Lewandowski is going to hurt. He is not somebody, as good as Sadio Mane is, you can just say, we'll plug somebody else in there. At points in the last 3-4 years, this guy has been the best player in the world. He scores 30-plus goals every season. He is the focal point of everything they do in attack. It is not clear somebody else can carry that load the way he did. And it is not clear Sadio Mane is capable of doing that because he's never been in this kind of position. There is absolutely a world in which Bayern take a step back without Robert Lewandowski, which is, the coldest take out there. And by take a step back, I mean more than just they're not quite as good, as in they might be vulnerable. I would be tempted to pick Dortmund to win if they would have held on to Haaland, but they both lost their strikers, so to a certain extent, and brought in new ones that fit well with what they're trying to do and make a lot of sense. So to a certain extent, that's just kind of a wash. But the other part of this for me, and why I love what Dortmund have done so much, I will keep going back to the same things in this conversation about the top of the Bundesliga and the battle between these two teams. For Dortmund to win this league and to really give Bayern a contest from match day 1 to match day 34, two things have to change. A, they got to start winning some of these head-to-head matchups. They're dropping 4 to 6 points every season, it seems like, head-to-head. When you're trying to catch Bayern, you need to be flipping that and getting, at the very least, a 3-point edge or something. You win at home, draw on the road. Second, they got to fix the defense, which is where I am optimistic this race could be really, really, really interesting. Niklas Süle is incredibly experienced. He won the league plenty of times with Bayern, and Nico Schlotterbeck was fantastic last season. This is the best group of center backs Dortmund has had since at least the first Matt Hummels era, which, Jurgen Klopp was there, and they were very much giving Bayern a run for their money. in a way they really haven't since. So even if Haller is gone for an extended period of time, they can score goals. That has never been the problem. The problem is, can they defend on a level comparable to Bayern Munich? Because they haven't been close. And it's those 5, 6, 8 points that end up separating those teams at the end of the season, even when Dortmund have a good year and are competitive. That could actually change. This is the first time I see something from a roster construction standpoint that I look at and say, I can see a world in which Dortmund are good enough defensively to really, really challenge Bayern and give us what we haven't had in this league, which is a genuine back and forth, I don't know who's going to win title race. It's been a lot of, well, Dortmund's hanging around, maybe, if they can win their Klassiker, and of course that doesn't happen, and then they're just sort of hanging. I'm optimistic this season could be different. I also am not betting against Bayern Munich until they give me reason to do so, and even in a down year last season where they were nowhere near the best team in the world, they still gave you no reason to actually bet against them in Germany. And now Erling Haaland is gone. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just telling you there are reasons why this actually could get really interesting and is worth paying attention to. Storyline number 2. And I'm going to use some version of this for a lot of the leagues just because it's a fascinating subplot to the title race, which is the battle for the top 4 in the Champions League spots. But particularly for Germany, I wanted to highlight this because 6th place Freiburg, 3 points back from Leipzig, who finished 4th. Union Berlin, of course, were in 5th. I believe I mentioned that before. Leipzig had a bad year, and it started with the Jesse Marsch thing not working. They picked it up some, but they are not the same force they were 2-3 years ago. And so you've got, a Freiburg team, a Union Berlin team, both coming off really good seasons. And then also you have this very fascinating, you're expecting Bayer Leverkusen to be there as well. And then you have this fascinating question of how does Eintracht Frankfurt handle playing in the Champions League, and can they manage the Champions League part of this with an improved domestic season? Because they weren't good last year, but they found a way to win the Europa League. So all of a sudden they're in the Champions League. It's sort of that Villarreal thing where, they qualified for it. We'll get to them in a minute here, but they qualified for Europa Conference League while also making the Champions League semifinals. It is really difficult for these smaller clubs to balance both. Now, Frankfurt was playing in European competition and played as many European games as they could because they got the final Europa League. But also they paid a price for it domestically with where they finished. On paper, they could absolutely contend for a top 4 spot. Are they actually able to, though, with also having this Champions League responsibility? Or, because you're not going to necessarily fancy them to get out of the group stage, does it end up helping them and allow them to have a better season in the Bundesliga than last year because they're not playing as many games that they go out in the group stage? It's a very interesting sort of subplot to all of this I wanted to highlight. And number 3 is very simply, how do these teams that just got promoted fare? Because they are not your prototypical teams that just got promoted. We're talking about Schalke and Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen had 6 top 3 finishes in a 7-year span, from 2003, 2004 to 2009, 2010 season. Schalke have consistently been in Europe over the past decade or so and finished 2nd as recently as 2017-18. And they both got relegated. And now they're both promoted. Of course, these squads are nowhere near as good as the ones when they were playing in Europe consistently. But this is I mean, the Bundesliga version of Leeds United getting promoted. These are clubs with big time histories, massive amounts of success. They are big names in German soccer. And the Schalke part of this and just the disaster that led to them getting relegated is fascinating. Simply, how do they rebound? But you got a lot of teams at the bottom of the Bundesliga who have capitalized on the fact that these two teams, who were just locks to be there year in and year out, all of a sudden really struggled. And so you had these open Bundesliga spots because they got relegated and they were in very, very dark places as a club. Now they're back. What does this look like? Are they able to, get their grip on the Bundesliga, avoid getting relegated, and then start flexing some financial muscle and slowly build back to where they were? Because this is, again, going back to the Leeds thing. It's the same idea of these teams expect to be competing for Europe. But to get from a promoted team, and these teams are not that Leeds United team that came up. It's so difficult to get from that point to where you're competing for Europe. Just look at how Leeds followed up their very impressive debut season, return to the Premier League. Nearly got themselves relegated. So that is another fascinating storyline in all of this to me is, what do these teams look like? Are they any good? Do they go straight back down? Or are we looking at this going, okay, I see what they're doing. They're getting the results they need. Can they then build on this and start that trajectory back to getting to be where they should, which is definitely top half of the league and right there knocking on the door of European competition and finishing in the top 4 on a fairly consistent basis. They got a long way to go, but it is not, you don't have teams getting promoted like this in every league, so I wanted to highlight that.